Okay, here we go. Chapters 7 and 8. All right, make sure you're following along with me as I read. Chapter 7. All right, boys and girls, Miss Pimsel said. It is almost time for lunch. Clear up your things. Paint pots securely closed, brushes washed, paintings unpinned and laid out to dry, drawing boards stacked against the wall. Ah, there's the bell. Front row first. Timothy leading, then Robin in a single file. Go! John alone walked slowly in the throng hurrying along the corridors to the school cafeteria. The school was proud of the cafeteria and the food served in it. The room was spacious and bright, and with the windows all the way along one side overlooking the playground and the playing fields beyond. The opposite side was wholly taken up by a shiny silver service counter. Several boys and girls were already settled at tables by the time John took his place in line. Enviously, John noticed a boy at a nearby table stuck a straw dipped in a milk bottle that was dull with frost. John could imagine the refreshing taste of cold, creamy milk. At another table, a group of girls were eating fat red cherries. John could almost feel the firm fruit on his tongue and the pleasure of biting through the tart, juicy pulp. The cherries must taste good. They must be thirst quenching. John unhappily took a tray from the pile and slid it along the rails in front of the top of the counter. He put a paper napkin, a glass, and a gleaming spoon, a knife, and a fork on the tray. It seemed hardly worth the while, but he felt that he might as well try the food and drink. Perhaps if I eat a different way without letting anything touch my lips, he muttered, my lunch won't at all change to chocolate. He was not very hopeful. "What?" asked the boy standing next to him. "Nothing," John said. "I thought I heard you say something about chocolate," the boy said. "I hope this is the day for chocolate cream pie," he added. "That'd be super." On chocolate cream pie days of the past, John had been known to skip the main course so that he might spend all of his lunch money on dessert. The thought of 4 pieces of chocolate cream pie now suddenly made his stomach feel as though he were on a roller coaster, an uneasy, flibbery, jittery sensation. John shuddered. "Okay," he commented, wrinkling up his nose. The other boy shrugged his shoulders and started to choose his meal. John took a plate of cold chicken and ham, potato chips, and a crisp, moist lettuce and tomato salad. The white of the chicken and the pink of the ham, the gold of the potatoes, the pale green of the lettuce, and the red of the tomato looked delicious. He also took a half a pint of milk, a thick crusted whole wheat roll, and a cool pat of butter, a tumbler of water with ice chips clinking against the glass, and a dish of fresh fruit, slices of orange and grapefruit and bananas and grapes. John's tray was loaded with just the sort of meal his mother always trying to persuade him to eat. Until today, John had always thought it was pretty dull to eat sensible things when there were sweeter food and drink to be had. Today, however, the sensible things looked most appetizing, and his mouth began to water in its new sticky way. John paid for the lunch with the money his mother had given him and went to an empty table and sat down. His fingers trembling slightly with eagerness, he cut a slice of lettuce. His fork went through the leaves with a promising crunch. He stuck the prongs of the fork into a mouth-sized piece of lettuce and carefully inserted it into his mouth. The lettuce didn't touch his wide-stretched lips. John's teeth came together in crisp layers of sweet chocolate. He took a small piece of potato chip, tilted back his head until he was looking straight up at the ceiling, and dropped the morsel straight down in his throat. He felt it go down, a sharp fragment of sweet chocolate. He tried the milk, the ice water, the fruit. Every solid and liquid he sampled was transformed as soon as it entered his mouth. Then he became aware of the shocking novelty that he hadn't noticed at breakfast. At the rim of each glass there was a small semicircle of opaque brown. the bowl of his spoon and the prongs of his fork that had become brown. As John watched, horrified, the areas of magic chocolate slowly spreading until at last the glasses and cutlery were all solid chocolate. The trouble was unquestionably growing worse. John's scalp tightened with fear. "What am I going to do?" he asked himself miserably. Oh dear, what is going to happen to me?" Leaving his tray of chocolate food and drink and utensils, John stumbled away from the cafeteria and out to the playground. Chapter 8. English class passed without incident. Miss Plimsoll distributed word lists for her pupils to take home. "The more words you know," she explained, as always, "the more exactly you can think." There were some difficult new words, John noticed: avarice, indigestion, acidity, unhealthiness, moderation, digestibility. And as Miss Plimsoll explained the meaning of each one, it seemed to John as though they all had a special bearing on his present uncomfortable condition. At last the bell rang. "Very well, class," Miss Plimsoll said. "Time for outside activities. Good afternoon." "Good afternoon, Miss Plimsoll." Miss Plimsoll gave the signal for dismissal, and the pupils in the front row filed out, followed by the ones in the second row, including John and Susan. Susan played the violin in the school orchestra, and usually she and John went to rehearsals in the auditorium together. This time Susan hurried on ahead of him. John followed very slowly. The members of the orchestra were sitting at their music stands on the auditorium stage when John, carrying his dark blue trumpet case, got to his chair in the brass section. Miss Quaver had already begun to explain a difficult passage to the girl who played the flute. Just after Jay sings "Nestling chirps and flee," she was saying, "You come in with your trill doodle 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 do. Do you see the place on your score? Good." "Ah, John," Miss Quaver exclaimed, seeing him in his place. "I'm glad you're not absent. As I have just told the others, this afternoon we're having the first joint rehearsal of my arrangement of a boy's song by James Hogg. We've been over all of the individual parts and now all of the sections, you will recall. Now it is time to fit the pieces together." John nervously opened the trumpet case and took his shiny gold trumpet from its bed of scarlet velvet. The beautiful new instrument gave him confidence. He worked the valves nimbly with his fingers and looked up at Mrs. Quaver again. "Now, John," she said, "tell me when your little solo begins." "Right after the end of the second verse," John promptly replied. He had practiced his part every evening in the basement at home for the last 2 weeks. He knew every note perfectly after the line, "That's the way for Billy and me." "Good," Mrs. Quaver said. "And don't forget what I told you, John. This is a happy song. I want you to play ta 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 ta," simply repeating the rhythm of the voice. "And I want you to be light and lively. This is supposed to be the song of a boy who loves romping in the country." Ta 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 ta, John thought. That shouldn't be too difficult, even with the whole orchestra listening to him. He had played it over and over again at home, but he would have to try extra hard here. This was to be his first solo. Everyone else was depending on him to play it properly. "Right," said Mrs. Quaver brightly, with her baton. She rapped twice sharply on the music stand before her. All the musicians brought their instruments into the playing position. Susan poised her bow over the strings of her violin. John held the trumpet close to his mouth and wiggled his fingers on the valves. "Uh-oh, what do you think's going to happen?" "It's close to his mouth. He's playing the trumpet. How do you play the trumpet?" "Ah!" Mrs. Quaver's baton moved from side to side and then down. The cymbals crashed and the drums thumped. The pianist brought his fingers down on the ivory keys of the piano. The violinist and the cellist made their wheeing and the whooping sounds. All were in perfect unison. The rehearsal had begun. After the introduction, one of the older boys began to sing, "Where the pools are bright and deep, where the gray trout lies asleep, up the river and over the lea, that's the way for Billy and me." After the last line of the first verse, John's fellow trumpeter echoed the rhythm of the singer's voice. Ta 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 ta. Miss Quaver smiled approvingly at the successful performance, and with her baton gave the singers the signal to begin the second verse. Where the blackbird sings the latest, and oak wit peep peep peep, where the hawthorn blooms the sweetest, where the nettles chirp and plead, the flute warbled according to plan. That's the way for Billy and me. John swallowed with an effort and put the mouthpiece of his trumpet to his lips for the solo. The mouthpiece instantly changed to chocolate. Then, almost as fast as the chocolate spread along the instrument, changing all the flashing gold into dull brown, the first note came out fairly true. Ta, but chocolate trumpets cannot withstand much pressure. The hole in the mouthpiece softened and clogged up, and the valve stuck as John desperately tried to finish his part. Mrs. Quaver's eyes almost popped out of her head as she listened to him play. Ta ta tu ta ti ti ti. It sounded as though John were trying to play a soap-filled bubble pipe. Terribly flustered, he put down his trumpet. Mr. Quaver was speechless. The orchestra was rocked by the uproarious laughter, and the other trumpeter leaned over towards John's chair and picked up the trumpet. "It's a chocolate trumpet!" he shouted diversely. No wonder it sounded like that. John Midas was trying to play a chocolate. John didn't wait to hear any more. He fled from the stage and out to the playground. Without stopping even to look around, he ran through the stone gateway and homeward. Oh boy, poor John. How is he going to get rid of this? I don't know, but we will find out when we keep reading chapters 9 and 10 next time. All right, I love you. Please let me know if you need anything. Bye.